Welcome back to the podcast that exists to enrich and inspire young Latinos.
Bienvenidos al podcast que existe para enriquecer e inspirar a jóvenes latinos. Bienvenidos una vez más a su podcast, La Alegría del Evangelio. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros. Estoy hoy con...
What's up, everybody? Jay here. I'm finally back. I know you all missed me, and I missed you guys too, so I'm happy to be here. And our other guest today is...
Hi, this is Sebastian. I am from the St. Pete community. I am the coordinator, and I'm excited to be here for the first time ever.
Llegó el invierno a Chicago. It's cold up here. So if you're listening from the south...
We're jealous.
Yes, very jealous. So estamos aquí para tener una conversación sobre Dios, ¿no? Yo creo que la mayoría de nosotros, ¿verdad? En algún momento ha batallado con su fe. You know, I think all of us in different moments of our lives have a struggle with our faith. And we struggle in our faith when things don't go well our way, you know, when we go through our battles, you know, we struggle with our faith, we struggle with our relationship with God. And we are here just to share a little bit about our own struggles and some insights about maybe how we can handle them. I don't know if Sebas, Jay, you guys want to start us off in just talking a little bit about, you know, what are your struggles with your faith and God, and, you know, how do you handle them?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's funny. Literally today, a friend asked me the same question, like, when have you struggled with God? Like, an example of that in your life. And what I thought of was, when I was younger, like high school age, a lot of times, like, I'd be in mass, like, surrounded by my parents and, like, my family. And I'd be like, is this all true? Like, what if, you know, I get to the end of my life and we die and that was it and there's nothing? And I remember thinking that was a really scary thought. Like, oh, that'd be horrible. Like, to have gone through life so excited for, like, heaven and to see God and for there to be nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think that what ultimately would bring me back was just times in my life where I had seen God, you know, and thinking that, well, even if for whatever reason all of this wasn't true, it still made my life better. And it still helped me to live a good life. Like, nope, I don't believe that any part of me practicing my Catholic faith makes my life worse or harder. I think it's helped me, and all of it has been good. And ultimately, like, the message that Christ shares is good. And I think because of that, almost that in itself is like proof that God exists for me. I'm like, if any of this was bad, then I would be like, oh, maybe it's not true. Maybe humans made it up. But just the fact that me, like, living my religion has always been fruitful, for me is like, no, dude, you're like, estás bien, you know, like, things are good. This is true. This is what you're meant to be doing. But I feel like that a lot of people must struggle. I mean, I did. And I feel like a lot of others must struggle with, like, you just hit that moment where you hit a wall and you're like, what if this isn't real? And it's just, you know?
Yeah. I felt like I kind of experienced something similar to that in a way. Because, like, I mean, as a kid, I always grew up, like íbamos a misa. It was like, oh, el domingo, like, ni planeas nada porque it's like, vamos a ir a misa. It's like, okay, like, we're going to mass, whatever. Pero no hasta reciente, cuando hace 2 años antes de que viví mi retiro, like, when we went to mass, and it was like one of, like, the first times that I had seen Father Bobby give mass. And that mass, like, I don't know why, it was just like, I guess estaba yo en un tiempo donde, like, tenía la misma rutina de siempre. It was like, go to school, go to work, and that was it. Y pues sí, ese día fuimos a misa, and I just sat there and really actually paid attention to mass. And I guess that for me was like a turning point, porque era como cerca de Ash Wednesday, y mi papá y yo, pues antes trabajamos en el mismo lugar, and we were going to go before work. And that's when I had, like, my first talk with Father Bobby, and I was like, hey, I remember your evangelio of, like, agape and all that. And then he was very surprised because he saw that I actually paid attention in mass, and Like that was like one of my first encounters with him, and yeah, like before like the retreat and stuff, and before I lived my retreat, like I was just in, like I hit that wall where it's like what am I doing here? It's like, yes, I'm in church, but it's like, what am I doing?
So you just go because it's routine.
Yeah.
And I think all of us, right? Like if you're listening to us today, you're going through a crisis, it's very natural. And I think it's harder when you believe, but when something is happening in your life that does not make sense, right? I think it has happened to me in my own life when things go totally the opposite way that I think God would like them to go, and also the opposite way that I like them to go. And I'm like, okay, God, I know you don't want this for me. I don't want this for me. Why is this happening? And I think it's very natural, right? It's very natural to doubt. It's very natural to question. But it's hard. It's hard to understand sometimes things that happen to us. But as you say, Jay, you were thinking, the question that you had when you were as a teenager in mass. What if this isn't true? Imagine, let's imagine that eternity is a fact, right? And let's imagine that no matter what, we're gonna go through eternity, right? And then we die and nothing happens, and you're like, all my good efforts to be a good person, to be a good Catholic, were meaningless because nothing is here, right? Well, we wouldn't lose that much, right? Because they are good habits. I think the faith informs our life in a way that gives us a good life. Be loving to the neighbor, be fearful of God. So I think all of those perhaps ways of being are good for our life. And maybe at the end, at our death, we say, well, we didn't lose that much. Because of that, we actually had a good life. We had friends in church, It was great. And the other side, we say, you know what? Forget it. This isn't true. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to live my faith. And then you die, and bam, there's eternity in front of you. And you said, holy Jesus, I messed it up. I'm going to be suffering for the rest of eternity just because I didn't have the courage to live my faith. So I think we have much more to lose. Even if we did this out of convenience, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Out of just, when you invest, I've been looking into investments lately, and when you invest, you always look at the worst case scenario, and the best case scenario is the risk worth it. And I think the risk is not really worth it. Like if you look at life as an investment, to not leave your faith, it's not worth it. Because if eternity exists, what we lose is much greater than anything we can comprehend. Mm-hmm. However, I'm articulating this and I'm saying this also understanding that we go through moments in our lives when things don't go our way and when we suffer. Recently my sister had a baby, and he died a few hours after being born, and I was carrying him in my arms in the hospital, and I was asking myself, what is the purpose of this? I mean, why? Like, why is this happening? Like, what is the message of this child that was born and died after a few hours, right? And I remember leaving that moment and thinking, man, I'm in front of a mystery. Like, I'm never going to be able to comprehend what happened and why he happened. Actually, his name was Sebastian. He was baptized before he passed, and we named it after Sebastian. But why? Is there a reason? And I think in those moments, you really have to kind of surrender and say this, I'm never going to be able to comprehend, find meaning to an event like this. But through faith, I can say, and through faith, I can embrace mystery and say, whatever this was, or whatever reason this happened, there's a bigger picture here that I'm not able to comprehend, that I'm not even able to grasp. And then you just surrender in front of mystery, right? Thomas Aquinas always said that, yeah, we can say things about God, but at the end of the day, the most appropriate thing that we can say about God is that He will always be a mystery for us for different reasons. But just that balance of having faith, very strong faith, and also being able to articulate our faith with our intellect, but also knowing that there will be moments in your life when you say, this makes no sense. This makes no sense. And we have to surrender to mystery sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, something similar was, like I've talked before on the podcast, when my mom passed away last year. Same thing, like, I will never comprehend why she had to have cancer and go through all of that, right, over the couple of years that she did. And then even in the end, like, I feel like I was kind of just okay with whatever God's will was, knowing that, like, I don't know what your plan is and I don't see the whole picture, but I'm willing to accept whatever you want to send our way. And then I think, like you were saying about earlier, about betting on eternity, like, I know my mom bet that eternity was a thing. So, like, I think after she passed, we all found peace in, like, well, she lived her life as, like, a good Catholic and didn't play with whether or not eternity was real, but always believed that it was. So I feel like, we have nothing to lose and all to gain, everything to gain in living our faith.
Yeah. One thing I would have to say is also too, like, I had a friend who passed away, and I don't know, Jay, I don't know if you know Father Roger. He used to be at St. Leonard years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he gave the mass for my friend, and one thing that he mentioned in the homily was that God picks you up whenever He feels that your mission is complete. And that to me, like, really struck me and made me think, like, yes, it's sad that our family members pass, or it's like people come and go, but in the end, it's really like it's up to God, and God is the one that decides, like, okay, your mission on earth here is done, and it's like, now come back to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we're looking at this from the faith perspective, right? And I cannot imagine going through tragedies and my own life without having faith. Like, I don't think faith gives necessarily, sometimes it's able to give meaning, but sometimes it helps you surrender. But, just going through the struggles of life without faith, I think that can be very, very, very sad, right? Because life is hard. Life is hard for you if you're Catholic, non-Catholic, Christian, non-Christian, Muslim, non-Muslim. Like, in this life, yeah, we get cold, we get hot, we get hungry, we get thirsty, we need love. Relationships are complex. We live in a world that depends on money. So yeah, it's very likely that you're going to crash at one moment because of one of the many reasons I just mentioned. And so life is hard, and it's hard for a lot of us, right? You might have all the money in the world, but then you have very, very ill relationships, and you're going to suffer. So everybody suffers in a different way. And I'm just thinking, it must be hard and sad to go through life, not having faith. And I think one of the things that comes to mind when we think of struggles and the struggles of faith, one thing that comes to my mind is the saints had very, very serious struggles with faith. The saint that comes to mind is Mother Teresa. She describes this as a desert, right? it's crazy that people would experience God through her, and she in her own life was experiencing like a silence of God. Like she was not necessarily experiencing God in her own personal life. Yet hundreds, and I would say probably thousands of people will see God in her, right? And I look at this and I'm like, it's kind of unfair, like you have a faithful servant that is helping you, that is, being embodies the faith in such a powerful way. Yet she has a sorrow in her heart because she feels the absence of God. And so when I look at that, I'm like, what is the purpose of that? Is it so others can say, oh, well, if Mother Teresa had issues and hard moments, we should also have issues and hard moments? Or is there something deeper, right? Is there a mystery there that maybe we don't have to comprehend? I have the tendency, I like to know the reason for everything. But I also think that when it comes to a relationship with God, like, my struggle is to surrender because I want, like, what is the purpose of it? Why is this happening? What is the lesson? And sometimes there is no reason. There is not a lesson. It's just a mystery, right? And it's hard to sometimes just surrender to a mystery. I think I continue to struggle to surrender to mystery, even though I can understand that that's what I'm supposed to do in my head. My heart is like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we all are going to struggle with like the fact that we're not going to always know the answers. And then, like you said, it's easy to be like, okay, you're not always going to know, so deal with it. But then actually to deal with it is really hard. And I think that that's something that I struggled with a lot up until my mom passed away, because then I think that was like such a big thing in my life where I was like, well, if you were able to get through that, like God helped you through that, I don't see how anything else would stop me. And I think that I think I have hit a place where I can be okay with mystery. And I know that a lot of people aren't there. So I feel like for me, it's something that I like to help people with. But ultimately, I think that you have to really go through something that rattles you for you to get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, like I'm really not in control. And that's unfortunate because I obviously don't want to see like my friends and loved ones have to suffer. But I can only tell you so much. Versus you experiencing it, then it's just gonna like click in your head,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're a species that wants to know the answers to everything, and I feel like that sometimes just like eats away at us. It's like why? It's always why. And for example, like with me, with my struggles and the way I see things, it's like yes, like for example, my community is. I'm trying to help rebuild my community. I know. COVID, I mean, it was horrible. The way it just like, messed things up for a lot of people. Took a lot of innocent lives and all that. For us, I feel like with our community, COVID really like put us at a halt. And right now, my struggle is not just trying to rebuild it, but also trying to get our people back, just because I know we were such a strong community. With a lot of good people and with people that I feel like were and are really good friends to me. So yeah, it's just like, that's my little struggle right now. And sometimes I wish I could know the answers as to why they don't come to community or anything like that. But, I've come to a point where it's like, you know what, like the door is always open and whenever they want to come, they can come. And if they can't, I understand, it's come to a point where I'm kind of at peace. And, from time to time, I check up on them to see how they're doing. And yeah.
I'm thinking something. I was just thinking when you said we are a species that is always looking for answers. I'm thinking we are also a species that is always finding a way or looking for a way to connect to the transcendent, right? Like we know, like there is something in us, in our senses, and our intelligence that says, there's something weird than you. This is, you are very small around, when you compare yourself to the reality of the universe. And I feel that we have this hunger also to discover, to find, to connect to the transcendent, to God. And I remember reading an article that, I as I talk to people all the time, I'm like, talk to God. Even, Pope Francis says that even when you're mad, you should talk to God because God wants to hear it. God wants to be in relationship with you. And I was like telling people, I'm like, talk to God. You should always talk to God and blah, blah, blah. Then comes to me and I'm like, my conversation with you is that I don't want to talk to you, right? And then the other side of this is, I read an article about prayer and what prayer is, and the first sentence of the article was, if you think prayer is a conversation, you're wrong. And I was like, what do you mean? And then he went on to explaining that, in prayer, we enter a conversation where we are not talking to an equal. We are not talking to an equal. We are the beggar always, right? Like in prayer, it's a conversation when you are the beggar. When you are begging, you don't enter into prayer as a conversation with as the equal to God. And I think sometimes we struggle with relationships, my brother, my sister, and we are used to struggle with relationships with equals, right? The relationship with my brother is complex, with my friend is complex. I had a breakup, and those conversations are hard and difficult. But it's even harder, right? When we think about when we have to kind of be in our knees, like it's very symbolic, right? That we pray in our knees. Because when we pray, we enter in conversation as the one that is begging, not talking to an equal, but really entering in prayer as the beggar. And that's hard. That's very hard to do when you're mad. That's very hard to do when you're frustrated. Like if you experience an injustice, and then you have to go and beg God to fix the injustice. You're like, why do I have to beg you to do the right thing? Right. But then we have to remind ourselves, he's not some kind of a human judge, right? That we shouldn't beg or, So it's complex, right? Like our relationship with God and the relationship to the transcendent is complex. And I have my struggles with it. And I think in a way, I think the struggles are natural. And it's also beautiful, in my own difficult moments, in my own difficult times, where I find the most peace in my prayer is when I say, you do you, God. Like, I have no idea what is happening. I have no idea why this is happening. I have no idea why I'm feeling the way about this, or why this injustice, or why this moment of suffering is happening. But please do your will, because at the end of the day, I think what has brought peace in my life, not only momentarily, but peace for real, like real peace, has been surrendering, And I think we all have to kind of understand faith and prayer through surrendering, right? There's gonna be one moment, probably multiple moments if you're me, where you're just gonna have to say, I surrender. And that's painful. That's very painful. And Jesus himself did it. He surrendered himself to the authorities of the world. And I'm sure that was painful. So I continue to find inspiration in the surrendering of Jesus. And I continue to pray the psalm that he prayed in the cross, right? God, why have you forgotten me? And I love that psalm because I think it speaks about the moments where we all feel left out by God. ¿Qué piensan, pensadores?
So I'm currently taking a Bible class in school, and we covered a lot about Moses, and everything you just said just makes me think so much about Moses and how he just like constantly has to go up the mountain and talk to God and like basically be like, yo, you promised us this, like where is it, like you promised us the promised land, and now we're stuck here wandering in the desert, and they're in there for 40 years. And I remember there's like points where Moses goes and like yells at God. He's like, yo, you like promised us like all this stuff, and God's like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. He's like, no, you promised, like you said you were gonna do this. And he's like, okay, fine, I promise, like I guess I'll do it. So I feel like we're all going to be Moses at some point, like where we have like a plan for our life, and at some point God will be like, you know what, I like that plan. Let's do that. And then you're like, okay, sweet, that's the plan. And then you're kind of like, you're going along life, and then suddenly things are completely messed up, and you're like, whoa, yo, you told me this was the plan. Like, what's going on? Like, and then you get frustrated. And I think for me, like the idea of yelling at God is so weird. Where like Vicente, you've told me like that you do that a lot, and like looking at the Bible story of Moses, like did that too. Is like, well, it's not. It shouldn't be something that is weird to us, because if we really want to be in a relationship, like we all yell at our family and stuff. Like it just happens when you're close to somebody and you get frustrated in moments of passion and stuff. And I feel like that even we see Jesus like in the Gospels, where he constantly is going away to pray from everybody, because he needs to make sure that what God told him was the plan is still the plan. Like I love in the scriptures when Jesus is going to start his ministry, and he's like, I'm just going to leave for 40 days and go into the desert and just be like, yo, what's the plan? Like obviously they've been through the plan, like he knows what he came to do, but he's like, I just got to make sure. And then he just does that throughout the gospel, where he's like, let me go make sure this is still the plan. And I'm sure even like, well, we won't know, but I'm sure at some point he was like, whoa, what's going on here? And in the garden, right before his passion, he's praying and he's like, I know this is the plan, but if this could not be the plan, that would be great. But ultimately he's like, but I surrender to your will, and like whatever you want, I'm willing to do, even if it means death.
And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
How do we do that, right? Like Jesus himself is struggle, knowing, right? Like knowing the plan, knowing that he's going to resurrect. It was hard to surrender to the suffering, right?
Yeah. Or even,
think about me. I'm not Jesus.
Even before too, like antes de que Judas lo entregó a los soldados también, he went aside and he prayed, just like Jay said. He said, well, so what? This is the plan. Are we following through, Even then, same thing, And that to me is interesting how you brought that up, Jay, because I mean, I feel like I wouldn't mind taking a Bible class, just because every time I learn about God, to me, like, it's always something really cool and mind-blowing and leaves me speechless. But yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, just the fact of surrendering is really hard.
Yeah. And I feel that, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, these losers, they suffer so much. This is not going to happen to me. I'm the most popular guy or girl in the town, and everybody comes to me. And yeah, I feel bad for you. Listen, if you want to be a faithful servant, I'm not a prophet, but it's very likely that a moment of suffering might come your way. And So I talk about this not in a negative way, right? Like, oh, this is unjust, or like, why would this happen? But I think one of the things that I have come to learn and like kind of articulate very well in my own faith journey is the most important thing is the relationship, right? Like if you're mad if you met with a friend, right? If you just ignore them as they call you, as they text you, as they try to have a conversation, right? Like the relationship is never going to be fixed. And you're never going to comprehend the other side of the story, right? So as things don't go our way here in Earth, I think we also have to be the annoying friend to God and say, what's up? Why you're not answering? Where are you? Why is this happening? What what is the plan here? And there's moments that even then, even doing powerful prayer and intentional prayer and even surrendering, you will not hear answers. There's moments where God will just be silent. And I have experienced that, and it's painful. And I think in those moments, faith carries you through. Really, like you have to then surrender to like your faith and say, okay, he's been silent. I don't know what's going on. I'm suffering. I'm going through something difficult, but I have to trust that he's in control. I have to trust that he's looking after me. I have to trust that this will be over. And I say this now in the microphone, and I also say it on my own heart, right? I have to trust that the struggles that I'm going through are in his hands. And I have to trust that Mary, my own mother, our own mother, is also looking at me with love, with the same eyes that she looked at Juan Diego and say, aren't you my son? Aren't you my son? Why are you worried? Aren't you my son? And I think moments like that and pieces of our own tradition, right, our own Catholic tradition can carry us through the hard moments. So maybe we can finalize this little talk about the struggles with life, saying, well, if you're going through a struggle, it's not going to be easy, but find a way that you can surrender, find a way that you can depend on your faith, que puedas depender de tu fe, y muchas veces cuando no estamos en control, tenemos que confiar en Dios. Tenemos que confiar en Dios y solamente Dios puede sacarnos de la duda, del momento de sufrimiento. Y sometimes, I'm just going to say this lastly, Jay, because I know you want to share a very powerful quote that really speaks to you. But sometimes it's possible to find peace within the suffering. I have experienced peace, internal peace in the suffering. And I hope that, as you listen to this, and if you're going through something hard, you can go deeper and say, yeah, even within the suffering, it's possible to be in peace.
Yeah, I feel like, kind of just to wrap up, when two people are married, that's like the closest you will ever be to another person. And even then, you will never know that person 100% because as we grow, we change. So, a husband will not know his wife 100% ever. He just won't. And the same thing, the wife will never know her husband 100%. I think the same thing applies to God, even more so. We will never know God 100%. And the quote I wanted to share is from St. Thomas Aquinas. He says that love takes up where knowledge leaves off. There's only so much that we can know. And at a certain point, you have to be okay with, this is as much as I'm supposed to know right now. This is as much as I should know right now. Now I can just start to love because I've known what I need to know. And I think that applies so much to God. Like I've not, that doesn't mean that we just stop learning, but it means that we have to be okay that you're never going to know everything. But if you love God, if you have your faith, if you trust in Him, if you just surrender, life will be beautiful.
Or even going the opposite route of, maybe you don't know someone. Maybe you might not know them at all, but, you could love them, even though you might not know them. But through loving them, you could get to know them. That's kind of a route that I kind of relate to. I know with all my Iskali people, I may not know everyone 100%, but I sure do love them all because they're my brothers. And yeah, so that's the kind of route I took.
That was powerful. I was like, wow. You can love people you don't know. And I think that's profound. That's very profound. That's sticking in my heart for a few minutes. But just thinking about you both, just to echo what both of you said, sometimes we want to understand people, right, Jay? I think that's what you were referring to, like or like even in a marriage, right? You might not understand the other side. And it's interesting. The other day we were having a conversation with Diana about this, and she said, I just have a clear sense that I'm not supposed to understand, but I'm supposed to love. And to echo what the comment that you said earlier, sometimes we want answers. We are not supposed to get answers, right? So the difference between wanting to understand people, and I think we focus so much energy there, right? When we're meeting a new friend, we're meeting somebody that we are considering dating, we want to understand why you do this, why you do that, why you like this, why you do that. Why do you believe in God? Why don't you, like, blah, blah, blah. We're seeking understanding, and I think it's good. But I think Thomas Aquinas is saying here, knowledge is limited. There's only so much knowledge that you can have about a person, and at one point you have to turn the wheels, switch the switch, y en vez de tratar de entender, vas a tener simplemente que amar, ¿verdad? Y yo creo que los podemos dejar con eso, ¿verdad? Si estás batallando con una relación, si estás batallando con quien sea que sea esta relación, con tu mamá, tu papá, tu novio, tu novia, tu hermano, tu hermana, tu amigo, tu amiga, God himself, maybe God is not calling you to understand, but maybe, and only maybe, God is calling you to love. Muchachos, final thoughts, agradecimientos, saludos.
Yeah, I feel just like after this conversation, I just want to go give somebody a hug. So all of you guys
I'm
listening,
right next to you, so you can come
go give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. Tell them that even if you don't know them 100%, you're going to love them 1,000%.
Yeah. Whether or not you're going through a rough time, especially with someone, with a brother, a sister, a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, go give them a hug. Just because ultimately at the end of the day, you love them no matter what has happened or what happened or things that you guys are going through. Just give them a hug and leave it up to God in his hands, and he'll take care of it.
Yeah. And remember, sometimes we make mistakes and we don't even know why we did it. Like, I have made mistakes and I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, that wasn't very smart, and I did it, right? And that happens to other people too. Sometimes they make mistakes, and if you're going after them, why? Guess what? Maybe they don't even know why they made the mistake, right? It's part of humanity. So, yes, we are called to understand, but I think the most important call in our own faith and their own Catholic tradition is to love. To love. Primera de Juan 4:16, Dios es amor, y quien no ha experimentado el amor no ha experimentado a Dios. Entonces, los dejamos con eso, con el llamado a amarnos, y donde el entendimiento fallece, el amor nos levanta. Así que si hay una realidad en tu vida que no puedes entender, déjala ir y solamente ama a la persona que esté involucrada en la situación. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos, por escucharnos, y mándale esto a una persona que sepas que lo necesita. No olviden seguirnos en Instagram y en Facebook en Iskali Podcast.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Iskali Podcast.
Listen with us and experience the joy of the gospel.
Escúchanos y experimenta la alegría del Evangelio. Te esperamos.
Dare to dream.
Atrévete a soñar.